Today we're going to talk about the Greyjoy Rebellion, which occurred in 289 AC, about 6 years after Robert won the Iron Throne. A little bit of a backdrop to this rebellion. The Iron Islands have always been a bit saucy in their dealings with the rest of Westeros. Really, it's easiest to think of the Greyjoys as Vikings. Every time there is instability in the realm, these guys pop up and start reaving and pillaging. Quellon Greyjoy actually wanted to change this and strengthen the bonds between the Iron Islands and the rest of Westeros. If you watched our Robert's Rebellion video, you know Quellon Greyjoy dies after joining the rebels and attempting to reave along the Loyalist and Reach coast. Before his death though, he started writing up reforms to unite the Iron Islands more firmly with the Iron Throne. He forbade reaving unless he ordered it, he brought maesters to the Iron Islands to heal the sick and tutor the young, and he even freed many of the thralls and tried to outlaw it. He also heavily taxed men who took salt wives, perhaps to discourage it a bit. But again, unfortunately, during Robert's Rebellion, he is killed. His eldest son, Balon Greyjoy, took over as Lord Greyjoy, and he wasn't too keen on the reforms his father had been planning. Instead, he wanted independence for the Iron Islands, like they used to have before Aegon's conquest. Balon abolished the taxes on having salt wives, allowed the practice of thralls to be legal again, and taxed any septons from the mainland tenfold the normal amount if they decided to stay on the islands. However, he did keep the maesters, seeing them as a very powerful resource. Balon at this time also saw an opportunity. The great houses were weak post-Robert's Rebellion from fighting each other, and he also didn't think the nobles really supported Robert as much as they did. He felt Robert's rule was a little unstable, and if he actually started a rebellion, not all of the houses would probably come to his aid. So at this time, Balon basically thinks that it's a ripe time to strike. Dreaming of glory, gold, and a crown, Balon spends 5 years constructing a huge fleet to be known as the Iron Fleet and gathering men. The newly built warships were massive, with reinforced hulls and iron rams, their decks with scorpions and spitfires. These ships were larger than any that the Iron Men had ever built before. Finally, in 289 AC, Balon declares himself the king of the Iron Islands and rebels against the throne. Balon sent his brothers Euron and Victarion, Lord Captain of the Iron Fleet, to Lannisport, where they burned the Lannisters' fleet. Victarion was said to have thrown the first torch that burned the flagship of Lord Lannister. In response, Robert called up the houses to squash this rebellion, which included, of course, the Starks, Lannisters, and Tullys. Robert's brother Stannis, Lord of Dragonstone, was sent around Dorne with the royal fleet to take on the Greyjoys. As Stannis sailed around Dorne to meet Balon's forces, Stannis' ships were joined by warships from Oldtown, the Arbor, and the Reach. But Balon, high on his victory at burning the Lannisport fleet, ordered an attack on Seaguard and many smaller raids along the Sunset Sea coast, led by his son Roderick. Balon eventually saw the threat from Stannis' coming fleet and sent his brother Victarion to meet them. In the Straits of Fair Isle, Stannis lured the Ironborn into a trap and smashed the Iron Fleet. This defeat allowed Robert's forces to cross to the Iron Islands. Robert landed on the Iron Islands himself with his wardens of the north and west beside him. With Robert's forces on Pike, Great Wick, Harlaw, and Orkmont, they began to cross the Isles. In the fighting, it's recorded that Stannis took Great Wick, Sir Barristan Selmy attacked Oldwick, and Tywin attacked an unknown island. Finally, Balon was forced to fall back to his stronghold on Pike, but Robert and Ned pushed forward and followed him. On Pike, Robert and Ned and his forces destroyed Botley Castle and then Lord's Port, and finally attacked the main castle of Pike. Utilizing siege engines, they took down the main watchtower and consequently brought down parts of the surrounding wall. Moron Greyjoy, second of Balon's 3 sons, was killed in the wall collapse. Eventually, Balon Greyjoy was brought before Robert in chains and told to surrender. At first, Balon refused, declaring no Greyjoy ever swore an oath to a Baratheon. Robert laughed and told him to swear one now or lose that stubborn head of yours. Balon consented and bent the knee. To ensure Balon's continued support, they took Balon's only surviving son, 9-year-old Theon, as a hostage in the care of Ned Stark. Robert then threw a huge tournament in Lannisport to celebrate this victory. Make sure you come back this Sunday when we start talking about Aegon the Conqueror and his conquest. Otherwise, come back next Wednesday for a random Game of Thrones video. Also, if you want more Game of Thrones content right now, you can head over to Quick Lore's channel, which features geeky lore on everything from Lord of the Rings to Game of Thrones to get your next GOT fix.